Hey y'all, and welcome back to Flick Connection, where in less time than you spend scrolling for something to watch, I'm going to tell you about some of the best hidden gem movies you can catch for free in April 2024. And unlike usual, where I just focus on one particular streaming service, we're going to talk about 4 in this video. I've actually broken it up into chapters with YouTube, Tubi, FreeVee, and PlutoTV. But if you check that top pinned comment, you'll find a bunch of other streaming services that are also hosting these same titles. Thanks to Fume for sponsoring this video. We'll talk more about them in a little bit. But for now, let's talk about some killer movies available right here on YouTube, like The Man Who Killed Hitler and then The Bigfoot. Sam Elliott plays a great character in this movie, and he actually plays a man who killed Hitler and then Bigfoot. He's actually enlisted by the FBI to kill Bigfoot. It's really strange, but the movie itself kind of feels realistic in the sense that it's a little slow-paced, a little methodic, and doesn't really go into a crazy supernatural direction, despite what it's actually about. And instead of being this older actor that's just whooping people's ass the whole movie, which those movies are a dime a dozen, instead of that, you get this insanely legendary character Sam Elliott's playing. You know, he's not John Wick or Liam Neeson. He's the guy who killed Hitler and then Bigfoot. Again, don't go into this one expecting a wild ride. It really is kind of an interesting movie that's actually shot really well and is way more slow-paced than you would expect, but it does deliver on its title. Now, immediately following the success of Pulp Fiction, John Travolta suddenly became like a hot commodity in Hollywood again. He had essentially disappeared, and everyone wanted a piece of him. And one of the first movies he did after Pulp Fiction is a little bit mediocre on the acting side, but is actually a pretty cool hostage negotiation flick titled Mad City.
Okay, I got 2 things I want to tell you.
I'm not listening
two
to
things.
you as long as you're holding that gun, I'll tell you.
Mrs. Banks!
Get that stupid thing away!
I do like John Travolta in a lot of movies, but every now and then he has kind of a wonky performance, and Mad City's definitely one of those. But you also get Dustin Hoffman in this movie, and the movie itself, story-wise, actually hits pretty hard. John Travolta plays a disgruntled security guard at a museum when he decides to go back in with a bag full of guns and hold the place up. But there's a school field trip there and a news reporter hiding in the bathroom played by Dustin Hoffman. And the movie ends up kind of showing how the media can hype things up and make them much worse, and it's actually got a pretty sharp edge to it when it comes to that particular theme. Dustin Hoffman is fantastic, and so is the supporting cast. Again, John Travolta's not terrible in this movie, but check it out, you'll see what I mean. The movie itself, though, does have a lot more to offer than his performance. And then longtime subscribers know I do like recommending anime movies on this channel when I think that they can appeal to a really broad audience, meaning people who've never watched an anime movie before. Paprika is one of those movies. In fact, this movie inspired much, and I mean much, of Inception. I hesitate to say most, but it's damn close, and when you watch this one, you'll see what I mean. This movie actually revolves around a psychiatrist who's using very advanced technology to study people's minds. You delve into dreams very much like Inception. In fact, there's some shots in Inception that are practically lifted from Paprika, but because this is Japanese animation, it goes into insane directions, way wilder than a Christopher Nolan movie ever could. So with Paprika, you get amazing visuals. I mean, the movie's well worth watching, even if you're not reading the subtitles. It's that visually impressive, but you've also got just a wild science fiction story that just really reaches further than a lot of live action movies are able to. And then before moving over to Tubi and the other streaming services, I also highly recommend The Twilight Zone. This is the 1980s movie based on the classic TV show. The movie itself is actually an anthology. It's one of my favorite anthology movies. Each story is so fantastic. The movie itself was actually plagued with a bunch of problems. There were multiple deaths on the set, and it's actually a wild story, but the final product ends up being an amazing collection of these reimagined Twilight Zone episodes. They took some of the best, most classic episodes and shot them with this high production value that looks like a really great 1980s movie. It's creepy, it's fun at times. In fact, the introduction to the movie features Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks. Having a hard time rolling that one off my tongue today. Anyway, that scene in the beginning is hilarious. It sets a great tone, and it's not quite a horror comedy, but it's not an all-out scare fest either. And yes, I watch movies for a living, but I've also got a pretty bad habit of binge watching way too many movies. Not the worst habit in the world, I know, but some of you may have a habit that you want to break, and that's where today's sponsor, Fume, comes in. And that's because Fume looks at bad habits in a completely different way. Not every part of a bad habit is bad, so instead of sudden, dramatic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad part of your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning, flavored air device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural flavors. And that's it. Instead of bad, Fume is good, making it a habit you can enjoy freely without any guilt or worry that you're actually still inhaling anything harmful into your body. The device itself is super nice. It's heavy, the outside is wood. It's also got a bunch of different movable parts designed for fidgeting. They've even created a little magnetic base that encourages fidgeting as well, again, to help you break that bad habit. And there's a wide variety of flavors available. I mean, here we've got orange vanilla, white cranberry, maple pepper, and mint, which would be kind of the most classic flavor. That's what the flavor cartridge looks like. You just pop it right in there. Pops right together. No vapor, it's got way more flavor than you would expect, which is what is going to help you break that habit. Break up from your bad habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. For a limited time, my viewers can save 10% when they go to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com/flick. You can use the QR code or use my code FLICK, again, to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack. I love that it's just simple, safe, and natural. Again, to get that discount, use my code FLICK. Here are the links. It's a great deal, but speaking of great stuff, let's talk about the rest of the movies on this list.
Why do you think you're in charge?
Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon just recently got added to Tubi, but this movie is not for everyone. This is going to be for folks who love slow-paced art films. This is a really cool flick, and it's from the same director as The Bad Batch, a movie I know people had mixed feelings on, but I can tell you, if you love The Bad Batch like I did, there's a lot to love with Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon. Kate Hudson is particularly good in this movie. It's one of my favorite roles I've seen her do in a really long time, maybe my personal favorite ever. And then Ed Skrein actually has a really killer character in this movie. I've loved him in stuff like Deadpool over the years, but his character in this is just on another level. In fact, his character in this is partly why I was so disappointed with Rebel Moon on Netflix. I mean, he's okay in that movie, but he's so good here, and I want to see more stuff like this from him. But Jong Young-seo is a South Korean actress who was in Ballerina, a movie I loved. She's in a bunch of great stuff on Netflix I've recommended recently. She's the lead here, barely says a word in the movie, yet still manages to carry it really well. Again, this isn't a strong recommendation for everybody, but if you love art films and The Bad Batch, definitely check this one out. I know it's barely a hidden gem, but I don't see it available on free streaming services often. My next pick is Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, a long-time personal favorite of mine. I just love the vibe of this movie. It's got a killer soundtrack, one of Robert De Niro's early performances, an amazing performance from Harvey Keitel, an incredible look and feel. Like I said, I love the vibe of this movie. Quentin Tarantino has stated that he essentially based the entire look of Pulp Fiction off of Mean Streets, but you also just get some incredible scenes that stand out separate from the movie. Something that all good Scorsese movies do, and this one's no exception. If you love the gangster movie genre, Mean Streets isn't quite one, but it's a damn good Scorsese flick that I cannot recommend enough. But if you just want some badass gangster stuff and maybe more action than you're gonna get from Mean Streets, I also recommend Payback with Mel Gibson.
How much is this guy Carter worth to you?
What do you mean?
My money, yes or no?
No.
In this movie, he plays a guy named Porter, but his character's based on a character named Parker from a series of books. Lee Marvin played this character in the 60s. And Jason Statham played him more recently. Payback is essentially one of these Parker movies. And it's got kind of a cool neo-noir vibe. It almost looks like it's in black and white. It's been like desaturated and has a cool style to it. Almost like an early Sin City vibe.
Hubba, hubba, hubba.
Lucy Liu's smoking hot in the movie, and you just got classic badass action in this one. And then one that falls into a similar category, but is a much smaller movie, which is why I like recommending it, is titled The Debt Collector. This stars and was produced by Scott Adkins. He actually does a lot of movies at this budget level, and they all punch above their weight, no pun intended. In this movie, he just plays a guy down on his luck that becomes a debt collector. Nothing too special there. They go to collect money, get kind of sucked into a plot. Scott Adkins is fantastic. The fight choreography is great. There's something about the lower budget quality of his movies that elevates the fighting as well. It just looks more real and feels like there's more effort into it. There's less Hollywood gloss on these movies. And his co-star in the movie, Louis Mandylor, is an insanely underrated actor. He's also in a bunch of movies like this, and his performances just always outshine the budget level of the movie. It's great stuff. Now, moving over to FreeVee. They have not added a lot of stuff this month. There wasn't much I wanted to recommend, but I did dig deep and I found some cool flicks like The Brotherhood of the Wolf. This just has turned into an international cult classic. It's a really cool flick. It's almost 3 hours. It's kind of loosely based on The Hound of the Baskervilles. It too has some great fight choreography. There's a monster in the hills in this one. Monica Bellucci is insanely hot in this movie. You've also got an amazing role from her husband, Vincent Cassel. Now, this is a French language movie, but FreeVee has two different versions listed. They have a French version and an English dubbed version. It's not a setting you can change in the movie. You have to pick the French or the English version. You know what I mean? You can go either way with that one. Now, I do have a few horror picks on this list, but they're interesting picks. They're not your typical horror flick. My next one being a great example. It's titled Pandorum. In this movie, Ben Foster wakes up from like cryo sleep or something in this massive spaceship. All the lights are out and he has to figure out what's going on. More so than a horror movie, even though there are some scary moments in it, it ends up being a really interesting mystery. He's trying to solve what actually happened here, and the mystery runs deep with this one. You also get a fair amount of action. In fact, horror is probably one of the lesser themes of Pandorum. It's much more of a sci-fi action movie with a deep mystery and just some terrifying creatures on board this ship. Lastly, on FreeVee, I recommend Gold, starring Matthew McConaughey. I consider this to be a highly underrated movie. It is based on a true story about some treasure hunters, but McConaughey got fat for the movie, he went bald, and just does a really great character. He's always fun to watch, and the movie itself is kind of fun. It's got a little bit of a Wolf of Wall Street vibe, where you've got people just playing fast and loose with this money, but it also shows how they went about mining for gold in the 1980s in the jungle, and just has a lot going for it. It's a fairly well-rounded movie. Now, I'm going to recommend some things included on PlutoTV, which is not something I've ever done before. I feel like their ads are a little bit overboard. If you enjoy PlutoTV and you want more recommendations like this, I want to see some likes on this video, a little more than usual for the view count. That'll let me know you want more PlutoTV in the future. If I don't see that, then I'll know you're like me, you don't really watch it either. But they do have the 1988 remake of The Blob, which is a fantastic horror remake. The main reason the 1988 version is so fantastic is that it leans heavily on practical effects. In order to make this giant gelatinous blob that's consuming people as it flows through the city, they did it all with practical effects. This is 1988. They don't have computer effects that will work for a movie like this yet, and you end up with some fantastic sequences. Now, the movie itself is just kind of like a drive-in movie. There's nothing too special about the plot that's gonna just make you think for days, but it is a lot of fun to watch. If you're the least bit interested in classic practical effects, The Blob is just a real gem. But next up, we've got one of my favorite Jackie Chan movies to recommend, Wheels on Meals. Yes, I said that right, Wheels on Meals. This is classic Jackie Chan, nothing too special here other than the fact that the man is just insane with the stunt work. Wheels on Meals is pretty funny as well, but the stunt choreography and the slipping and sliding he does adds to the humor, and you get some badass fighting in it as well. If you've been a fan of Jackie Chan's at all over the years, even if you've only enjoyed his American movies and you want to check out kind of what he was doing before he started doing movies here in the US, Wheels on Meals is a great place to start. That and Police Story, those are my two favorites. Next up, we've got a vampire flick that is different from any other vampire flick I've ever seen before. It's actually directed by Jim Jarmusch and is titled Only Lovers Left Alive. In this movie, Tilda Swinton and Tom Hiddleston play vampires. They're actually these long-living vampires that are in love with each other, and this movie's just got a really cool vibe. It's got kind of an amazing soundtrack. It's gonna have some tracks you've never heard before. If you're into vampire stuff at all, I consider this to be a must-watch, but keep in mind, it's fairly slow-paced. In fact, this would make an amazing, and I mean a really amazing and appropriate double feature with Mona Lisa in the Blood Moon. If you're into this movie the first 15 minutes or so, it kind of meanders along at a slow pace, but it just gives you a lot more of what you get in the first scene. And again, this is just one that I really dig, even if it's shy of perfect. And then we will wrap things up with probably the greatest Nicolas Cage movie of the past 10 years or so. Some of you are already saying it in your heads, Mandy.
You're a special one, Mandy. I, too, am a special one. Let us be so very special together.
That's right, Mandy is currently available on PlutoTV, Roku, Plex, AMC Plus, Shudder, and Hulu. So again, don't forget to check out that top pinned comment down below to find out everywhere you can stream these movies. But you want to talk about a movie with a vibe, Mandy oozes this insanely like metal, ethereal vibe all the way throughout. Now, the first half of this movie is very slow paced. You've got to be into the style of the filmmaking, you've got to be into Nicolas Cage, and you've got to be into sort of these grim, dark conversations that these characters are having. However, when you get to the midpoint of the movie, everything changes, and this just goes into hell. Basically, his character descends down into hell in this movie in a very interesting vision of hell as well. But that is the list. Thanks to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to check out their link down in the description if you've got a bad habit you need to break. But I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special free movie episode, and you will see me on the next one.